All right, I'm going to talk a little bit more about these amendments in the Bill of Rights. So, the First Amendment on religion. In the Establishment Clause, it says that government may not create and support an official state religion, and that there's the free exercise of religion, where citizens may freely engage in the religious activities of their choice. Can you imagine if there is, or what if there is, as I've noted here, conflict that exists with the law, such as religious drug use or animal sacrifice, right? In that case, are you able to do those things if they're related to your religion? For example, marijuana use as a sacrament in Rastafarianism, or animal sacrifice in some religions. What if animal sacrifice is illegal in your town or city, but it's related to religion? Well, here's an example here. I'll include the link in the description below. Check this out, this New York Times article, and maybe you can answer this question. What if the exercise, right, that's related to the religion conflicts with the law, such as religious drug use or animal sacrifice? Check out this New York Times article. What was the outcome here on animal sacrifice in this religious faith, and whether or not they were allowed to continue animal sacrifice even if conflicting with local law. Continuing on with the First Amendment is free speech and expression. So free speech and expression protect democracy, but government has regulated free speech, or regulated speech rather, in certain areas. For example, in sedition, and clear and present danger test, fighting words, and imminent lawless action. And it can regulate the time, manner, and place of symbolic speech. For example, and I'll include some links to this and show you on the next slide, the Westboro Baptist Church, which is a church that protests at funerals, and they had a court case in the Supreme Court in 2011. And lastly but not least, obscenity. Right? So yes, there is free speech, and this is something that's, a fundamental right and a model for others. At the same time, it's not completely free, right? There are these limitations as well. Now, Snyder versus Phelps, which is in 2011, there's a video clip here, and I'll include the links in the description below, and I'd like you to watch these links about this case, Snyder versus Phelps. Pay special attention to the information that will help you to answer the following. What was the case about? Who do you side with and why? Who did the Supreme Court rule in favor of and why? And be as detailed as you can. Go ahead and pause here and check that out, and come back. Okay, now on all this conversation on hate speech versus free speech, where hateful speech can be punished if it suggests specific and imminent harm, right? So for example, if you're suggesting that people meet to go fight somebody or beat somebody up, right, that suggests imminent harm, or to go kill somebody. So these are some videos which I will link to in the description below about hate speech, and is that really a thing? Is it a thing that's measured, and how? And then I'd ask you, after you review those, to ask yourself, should hate speech be censored in the US? Why or why not? The Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. So, in defense of an individual's right to bear arms, well, on the one hand, you can use it for protection, hunting, and other leisure activities, self-defense, and that it is a tool used to protect one's family and property. And that, again, in defense of an individual's right to bear arms, that it's not in the federal government's business to regulate gun use, and that the Supreme Court rules of the Second Amendment does grant an individual right to bear arms, but it's not unlimited, right? We've seen conversations about gun law reform across the country, particularly when there's a mass shooting in the country. If you will recall, after the mass shooting in Las Vegas at a concert there have been talks and legislation about banning the use of bump stocks. I think that's a sale of bump stocks, which is something that's supposed to help an automatic weapon go faster, shoot faster. So, there have been some responses and legislation about the right to bear arms. Now, and comparing the defense of an individual's right to bear arms, again, remember, you are balancing out the rights of the individual with the rights of the collective in the society, right? So alternatively, in opposition to an individual's right to bear arms, we might consider that the Second Amendment doesn't spell out an individual's right to bear arms, but rather a militia's. So, while there are militia groups within this country, that's for sure, most folks who own guns are arguably not a part of militia. So to what extent ought to cover them per the Bill of Rights? Excuse me. So the original intent was to allow states to protect people from standing armies, right? And in addition, right, in terms of folks having arms, you also have to think about the ways in which indigenous communities were dispossessed of their land, not only by state forces, but by, people, not just by like police, but by folks who are, who are armed. Okay. So, all of these kind of earlier intents on having access to guns may not be the same as they are now. And that, again, this is in opposition to an individual's right to bear arms, saying that gun control leads to less violence and fewer gun-related deaths. And in addition, that this idea that no right is absolute. Again, the right to an individual's right to bear arms, and how do you balance it with the rights and the safety of the collective? And this amendment, right, this conversation on the right to bear arms, we would be remiss if we did not also highlight the ways in which these laws affect different groups within this country disproportionately, right? We can look to the example, and I will include these links in the description below. For example, on the case of Philando Castile, a registered gun owner who was pulled over and shot and killed by the police after telling the police that he had a legal registered firearm on him. And so really questioning, and unpacking what we have in the amendments about the rights to bear arms. It's not a crime. It's not a crime. It's in the Constitution, it's in the Bill of Rights. So why then, on the one hand, do we highlight that it's a right? And on the other hand, for example, when we talk about the media, we talk about someone having a gun, someone being armed. Well, okay, which is it? Is it the right per the Constitution to have a gun, right? Or are these other factors that when you say that someone has a gun, provide some sort of, or seem to provide some sort of justification for violence against this person? There's a lot to think about there, and were we together, we would talk more about this. I'd like to invite you to check out some of these cases here about this and really think about those rights and how they are, how, do people have equal access to these rights? And these are examples suggesting that we don't across the country. Okay. And I then go on to highlight here guns and gun violence in the country. So let me see if I can find this here. Guns and gun violence in the country. Right here, I've got a link to a website highlighting, let me see if I can show you right here, highlighting It's called the gunviolencearchive.org, right? And this is just from their main page, where you can see, and they have a running tally count here of deaths by gun violence, and this is just in 2021. Here's some data here. Total number of deaths, all 31,140. That is recently published, and that is this year alone, right? Shows you broken down by homicides and suicides, injuries, mass shootings, mass murders, number of children killed, teenagers killed, number of officer-involved incidents, officers killed, officer-involved incidents, subject, defensive use, unintentional shootings, murders, and suicides. So I really would invite you to go to this website. I'll include the link in the description below to check out gun violence in this country and to consider it in relation to the Bill of Rights.